Before we get started with today's episode, I want to speak to you ladies. First of all, thank you so much for pushing play and tuning in. This episode is as much for you as it is for the men in the audience. When today's guest, Dr. Tracy Gapin, first approached me with the topic of men's health, I was initially reluctant, mainly because, according to my statistics, this show's audience is just about 50-50 men and women. But Dr. Gapin informed me that a large number of his clients are actually referred to him by their partners, most commonly their wives. And let's face it, us men can be pretty bullheaded when it comes to seeing a doctor. In fact, many of us men do a really crappy job of self-care in general. I actually considered titling this episode something generic, just to trick you ladies into clicking play, but ultimately decided against that. So again, thanks so much for tuning in, and thank you collectively for pushing us men to take better care of ourselves. Okay, guys, listen up. We, myself included, need to step up and take ownership for our health, and that includes our sexual health. I know from personal experience that this can be an extremely sensitive topic. It can be embarrassing, awkward, and downright painful. So my hope is that after listening to this episode, you'll get your hormone levels checked and then, depending on the results, take appropriate action. This was an insightful and informative conversation, so thanks so much for tuning in. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, and my mission is to help you get into the best shape of your life, no matter your age. We have a fantastic show for you today. Dr. Tracy Gapin is here to talk to us about the state of men's health. But before we get to that, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by The Silver Edge. The Silver Edge is my online personal training and nutrition coaching business where I help you get off the exercise and diet hamster wheel and start making permanent healthy lifestyle changes so that you can enjoy the second half of your life with strength and confidence and show up as the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself, no matter your age. If you're interested in learning more, send me an email at coach@silveredgefitness.com and we'll start a conversation. My promise to you is no hard sales pitch, no annoying incessant follow-up emails, just an introductory conversation about your personal fitness goals. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with today's show. My guest today is Dr. Tracy Gapin. Dr. Gapin is a board-certified urologist and founder of the Gapin Institute, where he specializes in individualized, cutting-edge healthcare for men. In this episode, Dr. Gapin shares his own men's health journey, which led him to where he is today. Dr. Gapin describes the state of men's health today, and it's not a pretty picture, and gives us a ton of information and tips on how to improve our lifestyles to optimize our hormones. He also discusses testosterone replacement therapy, and he tells us the warning signs of low testosterone and discusses exactly who is a good candidate for this treatment. Along the way, we discuss cutting-edge aging research, new peptide therapies, and the safety and efficacy of testosterone replacement. I started out by asking Dr. Gapin how he got interested in men's health.
So I am a board-certified urologist by training. I've spent over 20 years now in men's health optimization, doing a lot of work with prostate cancer, men with enlarged prostates, kidney stones, doing vasectomies, doing the traditional, disease model urology route, if you will, for over 2 decades now. My life really changed when I started developing my own health issues it was about 8 years ago or so, where I started struggling with a lot of issues with low energy, weight gain. I felt like crap. I was really neglecting my own body. I wasn't taking care of myself because I was so focused on my patients and my career and my family. We had a young son at the time. and I let myself go. And I'm so busy focused on my career that I didn't have time to really take care of myself. And I put on 20 plus pounds, and I was really in a poor state of health. I went for my first physical exam ever, Kevin. This was really an eye-opening event for me, and it's a very vulnerable feeling to see a doctor and really come face to face with your own mortality. And my labs were way out of whack. And I talk about this in my book, Mel 2.0, how this experience really transformed my life because I realized that I needed a lot of help. I needed serious health attention. And to be fully honest, I really didn't have the answers that I needed myself. And I'm this supposed, men's health expert as a board certified urologist. And so that got me on the trail of optimizing health, looking at health as aging as a disease, looking at health from the perspective of epigenetics, which means that we can actually change genetic expression with our lifestyle, our behavior, our environment, what we eat, how we breathe, how we think even. Got me to learn about peptide therapy, which we could talk about. Learned about a lot of functional medicine concepts. I learned about longevity principles and protocols and how to integrate all these pieces into a comprehensive approach to optimizing my own health. And once I learned that, well, hell, I want to share that with the world. And so it really, Kevin, changed my entire perspective on my life as well as my career when I realized that there's this men's health pandemic that I call it that's not getting any attention, where men just like me going through these issues as we approach middle age, and we don't know what to do. We don't know where to turn. We're frustrated. We're embarrassed. And men need solutions. They need to know what can they do to optimize their health. And so that has become my calling, my passion, if you will.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think a lot of people listening to this can relate to what you're talking about there, right? A lot of us, especially in that age bracket, that 40s, I suppose, we're probably right high flying in our careers and we have a lot of attention there. We have a lot of attention on our families, typically young families at that age. And we are not focused on our self-care. And as men, we probably do a poor job of that anyway. And to your point, I've heard you say men are terrible at taking care of themselves, and it's creating this health epidemic, right? We typically only go to the doctor when we're sick or when something's wrong or something's broken and not preventatively. And I think that's a good segue for you to talk to us a little bit about the difference between that just disease care and health care.
Yeah. So there's this paradigm, and when I give talks on this, I have a slide that has an arrow, if you will, pointing from one direction from right to left. And disease model world gets you from diseased state, whether it's a cancer, whether it's a kidney stone, whether it's prostate enlargement, whether you can't pee, whether you have a urinary infection, whether you have a cold, whether you have pneumonia, whatever disease you may have. And disease model medicine is all about getting you to neutral, getting you to some crummy baseline, and then we're done. So I would treat guys in the office for whatever men's health issue they had just to get them free of disease, because when we go through medical school, that's what we're taught. We're literally taught which medication or which procedure can we offer that will fix that problem. And so it's all disease-based. It's all problem-based to get you to neutral. We have this phrase in traditional medicine called no evidence of disease, or NED. And typically that applies to cancer, when a guy has prostate cancer, bladder cancer, for example. And when we get a guy free of disease or no evidence of disease, NED, we celebrate. Yes. Well, I'm now here to call bullshit, because that does nothing other than get you to some crummy baseline, some neutral point. And so my passion is, how can we optimize your health? How can we get you from this neutral point to peak performance? How can I optimize you, your mind, your body, so that you're functioning at your true limitless potential? And that's what it's all about to me, because we are not even coming close to tapping our full potential in this crummy disease model, healthcare state that we're in. And so that's really where the Gapin Institute is focused on. That's my passion.
Yeah, that's my passion as well. I had a rather similar story in my 40s somewhere. My health just completely tanked. I spent a couple of days in the hospital and They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And what was wrong with me is I was just doing everything lifestyle wrong. I had very high stress. I was eating horribly. I had been very active and took a period of being no activity whatsoever. I was drinking a lot and just doing all the things that a man or anybody could do wrong for their overall health. And it ended with some erectile dysfunction, and which was horrifying, embarrassing, didn't understand what was going on. And I went to the doctor finally in this quote unquote disease state. Something was clearly wrong with me, and I wanted them to give me a pill or a procedure or tell me what did I have so I could get back to what you're describing is really just a neutral state. And it was hitting bottom there in my 40s that I started to do a little bit of research on my own, because clearly, I had a very good general physician. He's referred me to a urologist. We've ruled out all the horrible things. And of course, the urologist said, we'll put you on testosterone. And my general physician was like, hold on, you're a fairly young person. Are you committing to this until you're 90? So there may be a time and a place for testosterone, but maybe it's not now. Maybe you should just look at your lifestyle. And it was really him saying that prompted me to look at things. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole. And long story short, I spent a few months on the testosterone therapy, and I just took myself off after a few months because I started strength training. I started eating whole foods. I started really prioritizing rest and recovery and sleep and these other lifestyle things that I want to talk to you about. But it's, to your point, I was that typical man consumer. I felt I was sick. I got sick, and I wanted an easy way. I wanted medicine to treat me. What medicine could do was treat my symptoms or mask them and get me to that, what you call crummy baseline. And at some point I turned that corner and said, okay, wait, I don't want to be the baseline. I want to be what you're talking about. I want to be that optimal health. I want to be strong and vital. I still have hopefully a lot of life to live. So I love that that's what the Gapin Institute is all about, that you're looking to help men really revitalize themselves and have this education around that they're responsible for their health and their health care. Let's talk specifically about testosterone for a little bit, since that is the main male hormone, right? When it comes to men's hormonal health.
Yeah.
What is the prevalence of low testosterone these days?
Yeah, great question. And a little bit of a complicated answer for you. The short answer is it's a lot more prevalent than is given attention. What I mean by that is there is this ridiculous reference range for testosterone. So if you look at your lab, so depending on whether it's LabCorp or Quest or one of the other smaller labs, that range is somewhere around 280-ish to around 900. Okay, and that range, people mistake it for the normal range. But that's not the normal range. I want to be very clear. That's not normal. Normal is not 280 to 900. That's BS. What that is, that's the reference range looking at the entire population as an average. And that gives you, think of a bell curve, that gives you the average of what the men's testosterone level on average is. Now, there have been several large studies that are very important to focus on. There was a U.S. study called the Massachusetts Male Aging Study. There was a study in Sweden and a study in Finland. Okay, 3 very large longitudinal studies. And what these studies have shown is uniformly throughout the world, in these 3 different studies, they showed almost the same data. And that is that there's been about a 30% decline in testosterone levels over the last 20 years. 30% decline. A 50-year-old guy today has a T level that's 30% less than it was 20 years ago. It's scary. We could talk about why. Free testosterone, which is way more important, more significant than total testosterone, that number was about 45% lower. And so what we're seeing is this bell curve that people think is normal range. It's not normal. Again, it's the reference range, keeps shifting down because the average of the population is going down. And so coming back to your...
I want to interrupt you just for a minute there. I want you to repeat that, because I think that people may be missing that a little bit. Because when you go to a doctor, when I go to a doctor, I don't know, they give me a little chart and says, this is your normal range, this is bad, this is something else.
Right. Yeah.
But what you're saying is, this range is, it's just what it is. It's a range of the general population, but it is shifting down, and it's shifting down drastically as we're doing this
Exactly.
30%. Yeah. So talk a
Exactly.
little bit about that and maybe
Yeah.
why that is.
Yeah. So it's shifting about 1% a year or so. It's shifting to the left, it's shifting downward. And so coming back to your question, what's the prevalence of it? I want to very carefully point out that what's the definition of low testosterone? Because most doctors still stuck in disease world state will tell you that if your testosterone is 281, hey, Kevin, you're normal. You don't have low T. And I call BS. And so optimal levels, you have to look at free testosterone, not total testosterone, but optimal levels are really at the upper end of that reference range, if not even higher than that reference range. And so it's very, very misleading. And so I would say that the incidence of it is much, much higher than what's being quoted because multiple studies are looking at that ridiculous reference range, which is not normal. Okay. So why is the perfect question, Kevin? And there are a number of answers out there. Chronic stress can certainly crush testosterone, poor sleep, poor nutrition, I believe that the two evils in our foods are refined sugars and the vegetable oils, canola oil, sunflower oil, omega-6 fatty acids. So we know those crush testosterone. But the biggest one that I will plant my flag on as the culprit, without question, is endocrine disruptors, which are toxins in our environment, which we know from hundreds of studies are crushing our testosterone. So endocrine disruptors, for the listeners, they're simply toxins, chemicals, toxicants in our environment that have been shown to have an adverse effect on our health. Those can affect hormone production, hormone function, hormone receptor function. They can mimic or block hormones. They can cause obesity, autoimmune disease, diabetes, cancer, precocious puberty, depression, on and on and on. But specifically, studies have shown that things like plastic water bottles, for example, plastic in the inside of metal cans, plastic food containers, deodorant, shampoo, sunscreen, cologne, even the water we drink is laden with estradiol and phthalates and atrazine and all these other chemicals that we know from studies are crushing testosterone. So short answer is toxins in our environment are causing our testosterone levels to plummet.
Yeah, that's discouraging, right? Because when we think about, stress, sleep, nutrition, exercise, these are in my control. The environmental toxins, somewhat, right? A while back, I made the switch from soaps and deodorants and shampoos. Don't use those anymore. Use different substances there. But the prevalence of just the plastics and, like you said, even the water supply, and it is everywhere, these environmental toxins. And you walk into somebody's house and they have the Glade plugins, or in their car they've got the little pine tree. There's just all these different fragrances and scents. And even if you look at I can go to my wife's bathroom cabinet and look at all the different makeup in there, and it's all organic and all natural and cruelty free. But when I flip it over and start Googling some of those things on the back they're big, long chemical names, they don't look very friendly to me. They don't look very environmentally friendly to me. So we do have this epidemic of low testosterone. It's happening to younger and younger men, right? I imagine you're seeing younger men come in with this lower testosterone. I think you had said that a 50-year-old man today has got 30% less testosterone on average than, a man 20 years ago. So what are some of the symptoms? What might a man or a woman look for in a man in terms of symptoms of low testosterone?
Sure. So the most common symptoms we see with low testosterone is low energy, fatigue, especially later in the day. Guys want to take a nap, or they start to kind of lose focus mid-afternoon. Brain fog, where they just can't seem to concentrate, can't seem to remember, can't seem to function at work. It can cause mood issues with depression or apathy. A common issue is lack of libido, sex drive. So I'll hear all the time where guys will say, I used to chase my wife around the house. Now she's chasing me. Something's not right. She notices something not right. And this brings up a quick point, and that is that, I know probably half your listeners are women, and I want to emphasize that women are the drivers of most health decisions in the household. And most men who come see me are there only because their wives finally pushed them enough to make that decision to come see me. And so women out there, take control. If you see an issue in your man and he starts to, and you think he's starting to lose his edge, he's starting to not have that same sex drive, energy, weight gain, especially around the belly. Guys will have that beer belly, which is a common sign of metabolic syndrome, which is, low testosterone is part of that. Those are all very typical signs of low T. So, get your levels checked, both the total and the free. And again, don't just look at that reference range, look at the actual values. And then finally, sexual dysfunction issues with, poor performance, difficulties with erectile function is a common side effect as well. Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier that getting your free testosterone tested is a great idea, but that range it's fallen further and further, and it's a ridiculous range. It's from, I think you said 285 to 900. What is what is an optimal number? If I go get tested, I get my free testosterone and it comes back and it says 500. Is that good? Is that bad? Is it okay? What should a guy be looking for that doesn't want to be, like you said, in that crappy neutral place, but really wants to have that optimal health?
Yeah, I'll just point out that there are a couple different ranges depending on which lab you use, or a couple different range, whether it's picograms per deciliter or nanograms per milliliter. It's going to be a little different, but if it's a 2-digit number, typically that range will look anywhere like from 6 to 20-ish will be what the range will tell you. I want that number to be around 25 or so. Literally between 20 and 25 is a key target for me. Most of the numbers I see will be a 3-digit number, and in which case guys will come in and it's like 60, and I want that to be like 250. So I aim for, and every guy's different. And, I want to preface this by saying that I go, quote, beyond testosterone, because I want to emphasize that testosterone is only one piece of a much, much bigger comprehensive approach that I take with men. But to answer your question, to be fair, if I'm looking at just testosterone alone, I would aim for sometimes a total testosterone as much as 12 to 1500 even. But the free of around 250 or so is my goal, give or take, but it depends on the individual, his symptoms. Proteins in the blood like SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin. Men who have high levels of SHBG, that will tend to bind to testosterone and make it unavailable. And so the free testosterone will therefore be low. And so some guys, you need to have a higher total testosterone to get the free testosterone levels where you need them to be. And so that's why there's no absolute rule of thumb. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach, because there's so many variables involved. Sorry for the long answer.
Okay. No, that's great. That's why we have these kind of podcasts, right? So we can have these more long form, nuanced conversations about testosterone or about any subject, really, because we live in a time where it's really, we're getting our information in sound bites. We're getting them in Instagram quotes and memes. And it's really tough to cover a subject like, say, testosterone in a 2-minute sound bite or less, right? So let's talk a little bit about how much control do we have over, and we'll leave some of these toxins and things out of that we may have only limited control over. But what can a guy do that feels like he might have some, or maybe he knows he's got low testosterone. He's gotten his levels checked. What lifestyle changes can this person make in order to optimize their testosterone and their health, and to see if that's enough to move the needle to get them healthy again, or if they need to go see somebody like you for that next step?
Yeah. So great question. I organize my approach with men's health optimization into my MALE framework, MALE framework. And that's part of my book, Male 2.0, where I emphasize that, the human body is a complex system, and every input has a direct effect. And so M is mindset, A is aging, L is lifestyle, and E is environment. So going through those pieces, M is mindset. Here I really focus on, first of all, living with intention and being sure that you have a purpose, that you're driven, that you know what is your why, and really living toward those goals, setting clear goals and having clear direction in your life. But stress, you mentioned earlier, Kevin, men are very high stressed, and we tend to always be on, and that chronic stress crushes testosterone. And so some brief science behind that, when we're chronically on, when we're stressed, when we're anxious about deadlines, when we're anxious about finances, about health, about whatever it may be, our stress hormone is called cortisol. And when we have chronically elevated stress, that raises our cortisol levels. And cortisol, number one, promotes the development of fat. So it increases visceral and body fat. And fat will turn testosterone into estrogen, and therefore lowers your testosterone level. It will also feed back to the brain and turn off testosterone production as well. And so chronic stress crushes testosterone. So I'm a big believer in mindfulness practices, meditation, Breathing exercises are massively valuable and important for helping testosterone, because what we're doing there is we're lowering our stress, we're lowering the sympathetic tone, and trying to emphasize our parasympathetic tone, which is more of the rest and digest nervous system in our bodies. And so mitigating chronic stress is really key. You can't get rid of stress. It's really more, how do we respond to it? How do we react in a favorable manner and enjoy healthy, happy behaviors that we like to do? Whatever, I enjoy tennis and golf and being with my kids. Other people may enjoy fishing. Other people may enjoy stand-up paddleboarding. Whatever enjoyable hobbies you have, take time from your stressful life and incorporate those. And that's a big part of relaxation. A is aging. That's all the science of hormone optimization, and that's not lifestyle per se. So I'll move on from A. L is lifestyle. Nutrition is massive when it comes to testosterone. Guys tend to eat too much sugar and too much vegetable oil, as I mentioned earlier, are massive. Or guys will try a super low-fat diet. And low-fat diet can actually be harmful as well. So you need the good, healthy, complex carbs, and you need the good, healthy fats as well. And when I say healthy fats, I mean monounsaturated or omega-3 polyunsaturated. So things like salmon, things like olive oil, things like avocado, almonds, good, healthy fats. Intermittent fasting, it's not just what you eat, but when. I'm a huge believer in the profound benefits of intermittent fasting. And so I recommend at least 18-hour fasts at least 3 to 4 days a week. Every other week, I recommend at least a full 24-hour fast. Some guys do it every week, but at least every other week, a full 24-hour water fast. Nutrition, looking at exercise, strength training is massively important. Strength training and interval training is beneficial for testosterone levels. Chronic long-term endurance cardio can actually be harmful. So a lot of guys who run marathons can actually have issues. And then sleep, probably one of the biggest impacts on testosterone. Anything we talk about today is actually sleep. And so getting good quality sleep is so critically important. Going to bed at the same time every night is really important. Dark room, getting rid of the blue light at least 4 hours before bedtime, all the typical sleep hygiene that you've talked about, I know, in other podcasts. And then E is environment. So I talk a lot about gut health. I talk about the endocrine disruptors that we mentioned earlier. Environment's a big part of it as well. So that's the MALE framework. Again, I'm sorry for the long answer. I can't keep it short.
No, I love that. Yeah, and I like that that you've got that acronym MALE, the mindset, aging, lifestyle, and the environment, because it's a complex issue, right? With a complex solution. You brought a lot of different things in there with the whole mindset, and clearly the stress reduction, which we as men aren't very good at that very often. That taking the time to have some sort of a meditation practice, some type of a prayer practice, a journaling practice, something to kind of get us centered. We're oftentimes not as in tune with that. And clearly, I'm a big believer in all those lifestyle factors that you mentioned, eating those whole foods, getting those healthy fats, prioritizing healthy protein, eating healthy carbs, and getting rid of all of the crappy processed food, which is full of refined sugar and oils that we don't want. And then strength training. Clearly, strength training is huge. And, these things all feed off of each other too, it seems to me, as you start to get stronger, as you start to eat healthier and feel better, as you start to reduce that stress, as you start to prioritize sleep, they all sort of pile onto each other. And there's this additive effect that gets you feeling stronger and more capable, more confident, more vital. And it just... Yeah, I think that all of that can lead to this different mindset. It's almost a shift in mindset, which can make a big difference for us hormonally, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a complex system, and people try to make it complicated, meaning it's an algorithmic formula. You plug in testosterone here, plug in a supplement here, and you're done. It's a very complex network that requires you to look at all the inputs and understand how they interact with each other. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And you brought up supplements, and I'm not gonna lie, that's the first place I looked when my doctor said, "Oh, you've got low testosterone," and it's not something horrible. It's just because you're living a crappy lifestyle. Sure. And I'll just go back and mention that right before my crash, I was really big into marathons and triathlon. So all I did was long, slow cardio endurance for hours and hours and hours on end, and then I stopped completely. But I kept eating, I can get away eating whatever I wanted when I was doing that. So, yeah, it's kind of funny that you can not really see what's happening to yourself while it's happening, but then looking back, it's clear as day.
Yeah.
Let's switch a little bit because you talk in your Mail 2.0. I heard you mention that aging is a disease. Now, my listeners are all obviously 50 and older. We're aging. And the prevailing wisdom or what the media would have you believe is that aging is inevitable. And along with that comes this decrepitude and this decline and etc. Talk to us about what you mean when you say aging is a disease.
Absolutely. So this is really a profound concept that is gaining a lot of traction. There's a wonderful book out there called Lifespan by David Sinclair. He's a Harvard professor, and he's probably one of the leading scientists when it comes to research on aging. So, this is no longer fringe theory. This is actually backed by science. And what we are understanding is that there are 9 basic tenets of aging, 9 basic physiologic processes that happen that are the foundation of aging. And we know from animal studies, from bench studies, that when you reverse those processes, you're able to actually halt or reverse aging in these animal studies. Now, of course, doing human studies is a lot more complicated. It's not as simple to prove it. But I'll give you a great example. There have been 2 landmark studies that have come out in the last few years in aging that I think are worth pointing out. One was, so let me back up briefly. How do we measure aging? If we're going to talk about reversing aging, the first obvious question is, well, prove it. How do you actually reverse aging? Well, first of all, you got to have a way to quantify it. And we do. We have something called epigenetic age. Now, what is epigenetic age? What that means is we can actually, through looking at genetics, we understand that there are marks on our DNA, specific marks called methylation patterns. And these patterns are a way that we can actually quantify aging. And so this has been a validated way that we can actually show that we have an epigenetic age, which is our physiologic or biologic age as well. And so that's a way that we can track our actual aging process. And so it's been a quantified, validated way to determine aging. So there was a study that came out last year, about 6 months ago, that showed in a cohort that through specific lifestyle changes, basically focusing on stress, sleep, and nutrition, they were able to actually, over time, reverse aging. And they documented that by actually showing epigenetic age got younger. Another study prior to that, this is now a little over about a year and a half ago now, the Fahey study, Fahey study, showed that they gave a cohort of men DHEA, which is a hormone that men tend to have diminishing levels of, metformin, which is a medication, but is used to regulate glucose metabolism, which we think that insulin sensitivity and glucose regulation is a key part of aging, and growth hormone. And we all know that growth hormone levels decline as we age. And we could talk about whether or not we should be giving medications like those. That's a whole separate discussion, which is valid. But what the study showed was that this group of men, a year after being on those 3 interventions for 1 year, their epigenetic age reduced by a year and a half, meaning their biologic age was 2.5 years younger than what it should have been at the end of that year. And so clearly we're showing that we can modulate and we can affect the aging process. And there's tons of research underway in this field. It's a fascinating field. But we do know that it is a disease that can be reversed by focusing on those 9 principles of aging.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Clearly, we can define age and chronologically. That's the most common way. But we can talk about the difference between a lifespan and a health span. And there's that healthy age versus the not so healthy age, but an epigenetic age, and having a way of defining that and testing against that. That's fascinating. I didn't realize that some of that stuff was being done. And, but clearly we can look at a 70-year-old in a nursing home and another 70-year-old who is competing in powerlifting meets, and they are different ages. We can all agree on that. They're both 70 years old, but they are 2 completely different people. And I guess the trick is figuring out how do we go down the path of that strong, vital human at 70 versus the one with, the metabolic derangements and
Sure.
frailty and the sarcopenia and osteopenia, etc. All right. So let's talk a little. I want to go back to, let's say that a guy comes to see you, or perhaps his wife sends him your way, and you have a consult with this person, find out that, okay, they're just doing a bunch of lifestyle things all wrong. So a little basic education there. This man goes out, he implements those things. He's eating better. He's exercising. He's taking care of his stress. He's practices sleep, but he still is not where he wants to be. He's not optimized. What are some treatments that are available? Because when I think of male hormonal treatment, I'm thinking of hormone replacement. I'm thinking of you're taking an injection of testosterone. And I suppose that still is one treatment course. But what else is out there? What is available for men who need some help in this area?
Yeah. Great question. So when we look at that A of the MALE, again, I want to focus on that now because that's really more like the intervention kind of concept that you're talking about here. And when we look at aging, again, we look at all the causes of aging, and we look at things like cellular efficiency, which means how well does the cell function to do its job, whether it's metabolism, whether it's building muscle, whether it's burning fat, whether it's helping create healthy connective tissue for repair. We look at things like mitochondrial function. So like the mitochondria are the workhorse, the power horse of the cell. And so how can we optimize mitochondrial function? We look at things like micronutrients. Micronutrients are really critical for a lot of those processes, those repair processes to happen. We look at all of the hormones. So when I say hormones, men tend to think testosterone, but how about DHEA, which is another steroid hormone, which is incredibly important? How about vitamin D, which is actually a hormone, not a vitamin? How about melatonin, which is important not just for sleep, but also for repair and other functions? How about insulin? Are you regulating your insulin levels? How about your cortisol? We can look at things like estrogen. Sometimes estrogen imbalance can cause issues as well. So realizing that there's all these other hormones besides just testosterone, and we could talk about each and every one of those. How do we optimize those? And do you need medication for it? Are there supplements, or what can you do? A common question with testosterone is a guy comes in with a testosterone of 290. He was told by his primary care doctor that it's normal, which again we call BS on it. It's not normal, and now we're gonna apply interventions. And we do all the lifestyle stuff that you mentioned, Kevin. And let's say now his testosterone now is 340. He comes back 3 months later and he's like, yeah, I've been doing everything you said. I've been sleeping, taking my multivitamin, taking vitamin D, taking fish oil, taking some other anti-inflammatory supplements, taking some NAC for glutathione support, doing all these natural things. But he's like, Doc, I still feel like shit, and my testosterone is 340. And so that's the guy where you actually talk about testosterone replacement therapy, because there is massive benefit there. And there are pros and cons we could discuss if you want, but a lot of those guys that have really crummy testosterone levels like that, they're going to get some benefit with the natural approaches, with the lifestyle interventions, but typically it's not going to be enough to get you all the way back up to a full tank like you need.
So, okay, thanks for sharing that. And if you're putting a person onto hormone replacement therapy for testosterone to get them to that, like you said, that full tank, is that a lifetime commitment? If that person starts at, say, age 50 and they say live to 90, are they looking at the next 40 years of doing that? Is it cycle off and on, or how does that look?
So what I like to say is, when a guy asks me that, I like to say, hey, look, Kevin, you're welcome to stop the testosterone whenever you want to feel like crap again. Whenever you want, just go ahead and stop it again. And so what we tend to find is it gives such amazing benefit. You have such an improved quality of life. You have such improved metabolic parameters. All the other markers that we look for are improved, weight loss as well as energy and focus, that the question is, why would you want to stop it? So
right.
Yes,
and I've heard anecdotally from people who have gone on to testosterone, and it's exactly what you're describing. They're saying, hey, I've lost weight, I've got more energy, my libido's back, I've got my mojo, I just feel better. And I think once upon a time there were some concerns that there were some side effects of testosterone. I've not really kept up with that, but it's my understanding that the side effects are fairly limited. Is that correct? What are side effects of taking testosterone long term?
Exactly. They're fairly minimal side effects. Certainly, we need to monitor it. It is a controlled substance, so we do want to monitor levels and be very careful about dosing and give only what you need. And if you were to ever stop it, what would simply happen is your levels would just go back to where they were before. And so, guys whoever may want to stop it, they certainly can. But again, the reason, if I were to give you testosterone replacement therapy, it's simply because you need it, because lifestyle interventions alone are not enough to get you to where you need to be. And therefore, from now until you're 90, your body will never make what you need. And so therefore, from now until 90, I'm going to give you what you need to help you experience and recognize those benefits of testosterone. So when we get testosterone, what are the downsides to it? Number one, there's really been two big questions. One is prostate cancer, and two is cardiovascular health. From a prostate cancer perspective, we now know from several studies that testosterone therapy, and I'm a board certified urologist, been doing this for 20 plus years. Testosterone therapy does not cause prostate cancer in no uncertain terms. Testosterone does not provoke prostate cancer. Okay. Now, yes, men who have advanced prostate cancer, we will often have to turn off testosterone, castration, to treat that advanced aggressive prostate cancer to save that man's life. And so for some men, castrating them is therapeutic, although that has profound negative consequences from a cardiovascular and quality of life standpoint. But giving testosterone therapy is the reverse does not hold true, where giving it doesn't cause it, doesn't provoke it. In fact, several studies show that men who have low-grade prostate cancer that's been untreated on active surveillance are okay for testosterone replacement therapy as long as they're monitored closely and there's no progression of their disease, which is pretty remarkable. I've treated hundreds of guys who have had radical prostatectomy or radiation therapy for prostate cancer, have no evidence of disease, who need and would benefit from testosterone therapy. I've treated and they've done just fine. So that's that. From a cardiovascular perspective, probably dozens of studies have shown that testosterone replacement therapy improves cardiovascular profiles, reduces risk of major adverse cardiac events by around 30%. And I want to repeat that because that's probably a really profound, strong statement that I want to be sure every listener hears. Optimal testosterone levels have been shown to reduce major adverse cardiac events by 30% repeatedly in multiple large controlled studies. And
yeah,
so
that's interesting.
yeah.
I hadn't heard that. I think I had heard probably
The
old
opposite.
school.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, for both of those. Particularly for the prostate cancer. I'd read somewhere that that's not so much a thing, or they had disproven that. So I'm glad you cleared that up. And I suppose in a way it makes sense. Certainly on the cardiovascular side, you can see why having optimal any hormone levels would be preferable for your health, and the opposite, right? Having suboptimal. Well, Dr. Gapin, what's around the bend treatment-wise for men? What's new or what's coming in terms of treatment for male health?
Yeah, great question. One of the biggest new strategies is peptide therapy. So peptide therapy is, I call it simply amazing because it has such profound benefits for both men and women. So first of all, what are peptides? Peptides are not pharmaceuticals. They're not drugs. They're nothing that can be patented or big pharma can't make money on them because they're simply short proteins. They're simply chains of amino acids, and they're enzymes, if you will, signaling molecules, if you will, that come from the human body. They're actually derived from natural sequences in the body that our body already recognizes. Example, one peptide called apidolon, which is only 2 amino acids in length. It's 2 amino acids hooked together. And this comes from the thymus gland. Now, our thymus gland is in our neck, and when we're very young, it shrinks and it atrophies and it's gone the rest of our life. But we know that apidolon in animal studies extends longevity. Fascinating. And so it's used in humans as well. Their peptide BPC, which is body protective complex, it is a peptide that originates from the stomach, from gastric enzymes, and it's been found to have a remarkable effect on reducing inflammation, both in the gut as well as systemically. So BPC is amazing for inflammation. Thymosin alpha is a peptide that's been remarkable when it comes to boosting immune function. It helps regulate Treg cells And this has to do with T cell immunity. With all this COVID stuff going on now, everyone's so focused on antibodies. But T cell immunity is really a key part of our immune function that's underappreciated. And thymosin alpha is amazing at regulating your T cell immunity. And so for viral infections, for any other sort of infectious process, thymosin alpha has been a very powerful option from a peptide perspective. There are peptides for musculoskeletal repair, joint repair, post-operative repair after surgery, peptides for traumatic brain injury, peptides for anxiety, for depression, for sleep, peptides for libido, peptides for hair loss and skin. And it goes on and on and on. So there are the peptides for almost any purpose, and amazing benefits, signals your body recognizes, and almost no side effects whatsoever, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that certainly sounds pretty awesome. So peptide therapy is something has been bouncing around here just recently, or at least to me, right? I knew nothing about it. Where does one get these peptides? You had mentioned it's not patented, it's not controlled by big pharma.
That's right.
How was this prescribed and taken?
Yeah, so you need to get peptides from a physician who is qualified and experienced prescribing peptides, like myself or another provider who has that background. There are a number of direct-to-consumer companies out there where you can go out there and buy it. It's unfortunately the Wild West when it comes to those places where there's no regulation, there's no oversight, there's no quality assurance, and they're technically considered research chemicals if you're able to buy it as a consumer directly from the company. So I'd be very careful buying it directly. Yeah.
Not sure I'm ready for the research chemicals route yet. Okay. So peptide therapy is one. Are there other things that are newer or on the horizon?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff looking at senolytics. Senolytics, when we look at the aging process, senescence is where cells are supposed to die and recover. Okay. Or new cells get formed, old cells die. That's the natural process of our bodies. As we get older, some cells don't die like they're supposed to. They stick around and they secrete, and they're called senescent because they're supposed to be dead. They're supposed to leave, but they don't leave. And I like to joke, it's like your in-laws. They just won't leave when they're supposed to. But these senescent cells will secrete enzymes, chemokines, cytokines that will affect local cells around them, specifically stem cell function. And they have a dramatic effect on the aging process and on cellular function. And so senolytics are really a cutting edge new approach to longevity where we can clear out these senescent cells so that they're not poisoning all the cells around them. And so there's going to be a lot of work here on senolytics and immunosenescence, specifically how can we clear out the bad dead senescent cells so they don't damage our immune function. And that's really cutting edge future of medicine.
Yeah, that certainly sounds cutting edge. So we had talked about the peptide therapy, this other therapy here, and yeah, we've got all these cutting edge technologies here. And I think it's an exciting time, right, for medicine, certainly to be in a field that you're in. Anybody who's doing any of this longevity or peak performance type stuff, it's, biohacking has really come a long, long way. I love the way the new direction that some of healthcare is moving into more of this optimizing human performance and not just sick care or disease care. So somebody listening to this, either a man or a woman, and they are thinking, you know what? I know somebody or I am somebody that I think I've got these symptoms. What are my next steps? What do I do?
Yeah, sure. So I'd love to talk with anyone who's interested. If what I've said today resonates with you, I find this my calling. This is my passion. Optimizing men's health is not a job to me. It's become my life, and it applies to me personally as well. And my charge is to help men be the husbands, fathers, and leaders that they're meant to be. And that's what it's really all about. For me as a dad, there's nothing more important to me than being the best dad I can be. And that's really what it really comes down to. So if that resonates with you, check me out on my website. It's drtracygapin.com. And there's a link there where you can, if you want to get on the consult, be glad to talk with you.
Great. And I'll make sure I drop that into the show notes so folks can find you there. Again, that's drtracygapin.com. You've got the book out, and it is it's Male 2.0, right? Find you on social media, and I'll put all that again into the show notes so people can connect with you there if they want to continue this conversation. And Dr. Gapin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, taking the time to share your knowledge and your wisdom with us today. This has been a great conversation, and I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me today, Kevin, and best of luck to you as well.
Okay, folks, that's our show for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And as we wrap up today's show, I have a favor to ask. Would you share this podcast with someone who you think would benefit from hearing Dr. Gapin's message? Now, statistics tell us that only 15% of people over 55 listen to podcasts, so the easiest way to share this episode is send them a link to this show and they can listen right there on the website. The link is silveredgefitness.com/episode 87. There you'll also find all the links to the resources we discussed in this episode, and you can continue the conversation over there as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on today's show. Also, I want to let you know that if you enjoyed today's show, I have more free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you can find my mini guides with my top tips on nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle. So head over there, scroll through the guides, and download whatever you feel would be useful for you. As we wrap up our time together today, you can always show your support for this show by giving this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.